Nobody showed up to my graduation, not even my own family. 3 days later, my mom texted asking for $2,100 for my sister's Sweet 16. I sent $1 with congrats, then changed the locks. I graduated with honors 3 weeks ago, and I'm still trying to process what happened that day. My name doesn't matter, but what does matter is that I spent 4 years busting my ass to get an accounting degree while working 2 part-time jobs to cover what my student loans couldn't. I'm 22, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the invisible kid in my family. My parents had me first, then 6 years later came my sister Skylar, and from that moment on, I might as well have been a ghost. Skylar got everything she ever wanted without asking twice. New iPhone every single year like clockwork, designer clothes that she'd wear once and toss in her closet, jewelry for her birthday, Christmas, and random Tuesdays because mom saw something sparkly at the mall. Meanwhile, I wore the same 3 pairs of jeans through high school and worked at a grocery store from the day I turned 16 just to have gas money. When I told my parents I got into college, mom said, "That's nice, honey," and then immediately asked if I could pick up Skylar from dance practice. When I explained I'd need help with tuition, Dad looked at me like I'd asked him to donate a kidney and said I should apply for scholarships. I did apply, got a few small ones, took out loans for the rest, and worked 30 hours a week at a campus bookstore while juggling my classes. I never asked them for money again after that conversation. Skylar's Sweet 16 was coming up in 2 months, and I'd been hearing about it nonstop in the family group chat since January. Mom had spreadsheets, Pinterest boards, a dedicated Instagram account for the party planning. They were going all out with some fancy venue, a DJ, professional photographer, the works. I didn't care about the party itself. Honestly, I was happy my sister was excited. But what killed me was watching them pour thousands of dollars into this event while I ate ramen 4 nights a week to make rent on the apartment I shared with my roommate Mateo. Mateo and I met freshman year in the dorms and clicked immediately over our shared hatred of our floor's broken vending machine. After that first year, we decided to get an apartment together off campus, split a 2-bedroom place about 15 minutes from school. It was cheaper than the dorms, and we actually had a kitchen, even if the stove only had 3 working burners and the bathroom tiles were straight out of 1987. My parents came to see it exactly once when we first moved in, stayed for maybe 20 minutes, and Mom spent most of that time on the phone with Skylar about some drama at her middle school. Before they left, Mom insisted on making a copy of my apartment key, said it was for emergencies, in case something happened and they needed to check on me. I thought it was weird at the time because what emergency would require them to access my apartment? But she was so insistent that I just let her take my key to get copied at the hardware store down the street. She brought it back 20 minutes later with this extra key on her keychain. They lived about 45 minutes away in the suburbs, close enough that they could have visited more, but they never did. A month before my graduation, I sent a message in the family group chat with all the details. Date, time, location, parking information, everything they'd need. Mom responded with, "We'll be there." Dad sent a thumbs up emoji. Skylar said, "Congrats, bro," with 3 party hat emojis. I even followed up 2 weeks before, just to confirm, because somewhere deep down I had this nagging feeling. Mom said, "Of course we're coming. Don't be silly." I wanted to believe her. I really did. Graduation day arrived on a Saturday morning in late April. The ceremony started at 10, and I got there early to save 4 seats in the family section. I put my coat on one chair, my backpack on another, kept checking my phone for their texts saying they were close. The stadium filled up fast, families everywhere with balloons and flowers and signs with their graduate's name on them. I watched other people's parents hugging them, taking photos, crying happy tears. My phone stayed silent. At 9:55, I moved my stuff and let a random family take the seats because I couldn't stand the pitying looks from the people around me anymore. I walked across that stage, shook hands with the dean, got my diploma cover, smiled for the photographer, and felt absolutely nothing. After the ceremony ended, I checked my phone with shaking hands. Nothing from Mom, nothing from Dad. But the family group chat had new messages. Mom had posted 4 photos taken maybe an hour ago based on the timestamp. All 3 of them at the mall, Skylar holding up dresses in some expensive boutique, everyone smiling like it was the best day ever. The caption said, "Sweet 16 shopping day. Our baby girl deserves the best." I just stared at my phone screen standing there in my cap and gown while families celebrated around me. They weren't stuck in traffic. They didn't have car trouble. Nobody was in the hospital. They chose to go shopping instead of watching me graduate. Mateo found me sitting on the concrete steps outside the stadium 20 minutes later, still in my graduation gown. He'd been at the ceremony with his family, saw my empty seats, and came looking for me after. He took one look at my face and said they didn't come. I just handed him my phone and showed him the group chat. He read it, and I watched his expression go from confused to disgusted in about 5 seconds. "Man, what the hell is wrong with them?" he said. His parents came over, congratulated me, took photos with me, and his mom even cried a little, which made me almost lose it completely. They insisted on taking me to lunch at this nice Italian place near campus. I barely tasted the food, just nodded along while they talked about how proud I should be of myself. Matteo's dad told me he worked in finance and could get my resume in front of some people if I wanted. These people who'd known me for maybe 3 years total cared more about my graduation than my own parents who'd raised me for 22 years. That night back at our apartment, Matteo and I sat on our beat-up couch with cheap beer from the corner store. He asked what I was going to do. I told him I honestly didn't know, but something had to change because I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep being the kid they forgot about while Skylar got treated like royalty. Matteo said whatever I decided, he had my back. I needed to hear that more than he probably realized. 3 days of silence followed graduation. No apology text, no phone call, nothing. I kept checking my phone like an idiot, thinking maybe they'd realize what they'd done and reach out. On Tuesday afternoon, while I was organizing my desk for my new job that started in 2 weeks, my phone buzzed. Mom's name lit up the screen. For half a second, I thought maybe this was it. Maybe she was calling to apologize. I opened the message and felt my stomach drop. "Honey, we need $2,100 for Skylar's party venue. The deposit is due Friday. You know how important this is for her." No mention of graduation, no acknowledgement that they'd completely ditched me, just straight to asking for money. I stared at that message for a solid 5 minutes, reading it over and over, waiting for the punchline that never came. I didn't respond. 10 minutes later, another text came through. "I know it's a lot, but you just graduated and you're starting that fancy accounting job soon. We're so proud of you, sweetheart. Family helps family, right?" The audacity of adding that they were proud of me, like they'd been there, like they'd watched me walk across that stage. I put my phone face down on my desk and tried to focus on anything else. The messages didn't stop. Over the next few hours, I got 6 more texts from Mom. Each one escalated the guilt trip a little more. She brought up how much they'd sacrificed raising me, how they'd always been there for me when I needed them, how Skylar looked up to me and would be devastated if her party wasn't perfect. That last one almost made me laugh out loud because I couldn't remember the last real conversation I'd had with Skylar that wasn't about her asking to borrow something. Around 7 that evening, Dad joined in. His text was shorter, but somehow worse. "Your mother is very upset. This party means everything to Skylar. We raised you better than to be selfish. Family comes first. Selfish." That word sat in my chest like a rock. I'd put myself through college, worked myself to exhaustion for 4 years, and the one day I needed them to show up, they went shopping instead. But I was selfish for not wanting to fund a party that cost more than 3 months of my rent. I opened my banking app and looked at my account balance. $847. Rent was due in 2 days, and I had maybe $200 in my budget for groceries and gas for the rest of the month. My money was stretched thin, covering just the basics of keeping myself alive. Even if I wanted to help, which I absolutely didn't, I couldn't afford to give them $2,100. I couldn't afford to give them $100. Matteo came home from his shift at the campus gym and found me sitting in the dark living room, just staring at my phone. He flipped on the light and asked what was wrong. I showed him the texts without saying anything. He read through all of them, his jaw getting tighter with each message. "You're not seriously considering this, right?" he asked. I shook my head. I wasn't considering it, but I also didn't know how to respond. These people had conditioned me my entire life to believe that saying no to them made me a bad person, a bad son, a bad brother. Matteo sat down next to me on the couch and said something that changed everything. "Dude, they didn't even apologize for missing your graduation. They jumped straight to asking you for money. That's not family. That's manipulation." He was right. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I opened Venmo on my phone. My hands were shaking, but I knew exactly what I was doing. I sent my mom $1. In the notes section, I typed, "Congrats on the party," and hit send. It felt petty and childish and absolutely perfect. The response was instantaneous. My phone started blowing up within 30 seconds. Mom called 4 times in a row. I didn't answer. The texts started flooding in, all caps, saying I was ungrateful, that I was embarrassing the family, that Skylar was going to be heartbroken because of me. Dad called next, left a voicemail that I could hear was him yelling even before I played it. He said I was a disappointment, that they'd done everything for me, and this was how I repaid them. Skylar even texted, probably told to by mom, saying, "I guess you really don't care about me." By 9 p.m., I had 47 missed calls and over 60 text messages. Some from my parents, some from my aunt who apparently got dragged into this, even one from my mom's friend from church who I'd met maybe twice in my life. The family group chat was a disaster zone. Mom had sent a long message about how hurt she was, how she couldn't believe she'd raised such a selfish son, how I was tearing the family apart over money. I read every single message, and with each one, I felt lighter instead of worse. I wasn't the problem here. They were. Mateo watched me scrolling through the messages and said we needed to do something before this got worse. "They have a key to this place," he reminded me. That thought hadn't even occurred to me in my anger, but he was right. Mom had that spare key, and based on how unhinged these texts were getting, I wouldn't put it past her to show up here and cause a scene. "We're changing the locks," I said. Mateo nodded and immediately pulled up locksmiths in the area on his phone. We found one that had decent reviews and could come out the same evening for an emergency fee. It was going to cost me $180 that I really couldn't spare, but it was worth every penny. The locksmith showed up at 10:30, a tired-looking guy in his 50s who didn't ask questions when we said we needed all the locks changed immediately. He worked fast, replaced both the deadbolt and the main lock on our front door within 40 minutes. When he handed me the new keys, 3 copies total, I felt like I could finally breathe properly. Mateo and I each took one key, and I put the spare in my desk drawer. That night, I blocked my mom's number, blocked my dad's number, blocked my aunt who wouldn't stop sending me Bible verses about honoring your parents. I left dad's number unblocked on a different app, just one emergency contact method in case something actually serious happened, but I was done with the constant harassment. Mateo ordered pizza, and we stayed up until 2 a.m. just talking about everything. He told me his family had noticed how weird my parents acted at graduation, how his mom had wanted to say something but didn't want to overstep. I felt embarrassed that it was that obvious to everyone around me. Before we went to bed, Mateo said he was proud of me for standing up for myself. It was the first time in 3 days anyone had said they were proud of me, and I had to fight back tears. I fell asleep that night feeling something I hadn't felt in years around my family. Peace. The peace lasted exactly 12 hours. Wednesday morning, I woke up to my phone ringing at 7 a.m. It was the apartment complex manager, a guy named Gerald who I'd maybe spoken to 3 times in 2 years. His voice sounded stressed when I answered. "Hey, I'm really sorry to bother you this early, but there's a situation at your apartment. You need to get here as soon as possible." I was still half asleep and confused because I was literally in my apartment. "What do you mean? I'm home right now." Gerald paused. "No, I mean outside your door. There are some people here claiming they're locked out, and they called the police." My stomach dropped. I threw on clothes and told Mateo what was happening. We both rushed out of the bedroom to our front door. Through the peephole, I could see exactly what I'd feared. Mom and Skylar standing in the hallway with 2 police officers, and about half my neighbors had their doors cracked open watching the drama unfold. Gerald stood off to the side, looking deeply uncomfortable. I took a breath, unlocked the door, and stepped outside. Mom's face was red and blotchy like she'd been crying. The second she saw me, she started up again. "There he is. Officer, that's my son. He changed the locks and won't let me in. I have medication in there that I need." It was such an obvious lie that I almost laughed. She'd been in this apartment exactly once in 2 years and had never left anything here. One of the cops, an older guy with gray hair and a tired expression, held up his hand. "Sir, can you tell us what's going on here?" I nodded and tried to keep my voice calm even though my heart was pounding. "This is my apartment. I rent it with my roommate Mateo. These are my parents and my sister. My mom made a copy of my key without my permission last year, and yesterday I had the locks changed. She's never lived here and has no legal right to access." The younger cop, a woman who looked maybe 30, asked if I had any documentation. I pulled out my phone and showed them photos of my lease agreement that clearly listed only Mateo and me as tenants. I also showed them the receipt from the locksmith with yesterday's date and timestamp. Mom interrupted loudly. "That doesn't matter. I'm his mother. He can't just lock me out like this. I need to get my things." Mateo had come outside by this point and backed me up. They've never been on the lease. That spare key wasn't authorized by the landlord or by us. My name's on the lease too, and I can confirm they don't live here. Gerald finally spoke up, though he looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. "I can verify that. I have their lease on file in the office. It's just these 2 young men. Nobody else has ever been listed as a tenant." The older cop looked at my mom with an expression that suggested this wasn't his first time dealing with a family drama call. Ma'am, do you have any documentation showing you live here or have legal right to access this property? Mom's face got even redder. She started going on about how she'd raised me, how she'd sacrificed everything for me, how I was being ungrateful and cruel. She demanded that I at least give her money if I wasn't going to let her inside. That's when it clicked for the cops what this was really about. The female officer asked me directly, "Is there a financial dispute happening here?" I pulled up the text messages, showed them Mom asking for $2,100, showed them my response of sending $1, showed them the dozens of harassing messages that followed. I also showed them the group chat with the photos of them at the mall during my graduation. They skipped my college graduation to go shopping for my sister's birthday party. 3 days later, they asked me for money I don't have. When I said no, this happened. I said, Skylar had been quiet this whole time, but I saw her face change as I explained everything. She looked genuinely shocked, then upset. The older cop sighed heavily. Ma'am, this is a civil matter. Your son is the legal tenant. He has every right to change his locks, and he doesn't owe you access to his property or his money. You need to leave the premises now. Mom absolutely lost it. Started screaming about how I was tearing the family apart, how I was going to regret this, how I was an ungrateful son who'd abandoned his family. Dad had been silent this whole time, standing slightly behind Mom, but he finally spoke. You're making a huge mistake. Family is supposed to come first. The female cop stepped forward. If you don't leave voluntarily, we'll have to escort you out and potentially cite you for trespassing. That finally got through. Mom grabbed Skylar's arm and started walking toward the stairs, but not before turning back to scream one more thing. Don't you ever contact us again. You're dead to us. I looked her straight in the eye and said something I'd been thinking since Saturday. You already did that. At my graduation, the cop stayed for a few more minutes to make sure they actually left. The older one pulled me aside and told me to document everything, keep records of any contact attempts, and call them if my parents showed up again. After they left, Gerald apologized for having to call me, but said he had no choice when the cops showed up. I told him I understood and thanked him for backing me up. The next 2 weeks were brutal. My phone became a weapon of family warfare. Aunts I'd seen maybe twice in my life were calling me disrespectful and selfish. Cousins were posting on Facebook about how some people forget where they came from. My uncle sent me a 5-paragraph text about honoring your parents. I blocked every single one of them without responding. My new job started that Monday, and I threw myself into the work, grateful for the distraction. A week after the cop incident, I unblocked Dad's number for exactly 3 minutes. I sent him one text explaining everything from my perspective, how I'd felt invisible my whole life, how graduation was the final straw, how I was done being treated like I didn't matter. I ended it with this. The door is open when you're ready to actually apologize and treat me like I'm part of this family. But I'm done begging for scraps of attention. I blocked him again before he could respond. 3 weeks later, I got a message on Instagram from an account I didn't recognize. It was Skylar. She'd created a secret account because Mom was monitoring her main one. Her message made my chest tight. I didn't know they weren't coming to your graduation. I swear I didn't know. They told me you didn't want us there, that you said it wasn't a big deal and we should do my party shopping instead. I believed them. I'm so sorry. We started talking after that, just the two of us, without our parents knowing. She told me things I'd suspected but never confirmed. How Mom talked about me like I was a burden, how Dad never stood up for me, how they'd been telling her for years that I was selfish and didn't care about family. Skylar was starting to see through it now. 2 months after graduation, I'm sitting in my apartment on a Saturday morning drinking coffee that I can actually afford now that I have a steady paycheck. Skylar's coming over later to hang out. Just us. No parents, no drama. Mateo's at the gym. My phone is quiet because I've built boundaries that actually protect my peace. I haven't spoken to my parents since that day with the cops. I don't know if I ever will. What I do know is this. Family isn't about who raised you or shares your blood. It's about who shows up when it matters. And sometimes the family you choose is better than the one you were born into. What do you think about this story? Let me know in the comments, drop a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories.